call the special city council meeting to order. It is Wednesday, July the 23rd, 2014. We do have a forum this evening. Glad to see you all here this evening. At this time, we ask you to please turn off all of your electronic devices. And I will lead us in the prayer and pledge. If you please stand. Upon judgments and make decisions that will affect the lives of those who live in our time. Please give us wisdom and understanding. Guide our decisions. May we be fair, just, and merciful. I pray allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to you, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. Before we start this evening, we have a very important matter before us, and I just want to remind all the council that I expect everyone to follow our city policies, and that everyone that is presenting to us this evening will be treated with respect and civility. And also, for the citizens to be heard, we expect you to be very civil in your comments, okay? Also, council, please speak into your microphones, and if y'all have any issues hearing us, please raise your hand and we will speak up, okay? We want you to hear everything. We have a public comment period, but I believe all of these are regarding the agenda item. Before we jump into business number one, please. Alright, so before we go into business item number one, we have a few people that have signed up. Millie Speedman, right here. Could you please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record? And you have 3 minutes.
My name is Millie Speedman. 614 Donaldson Avenue.
I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name.
I've come before you today in support of Chief Henry Dominguez. I'm an employee that has worked under him as a dispatcher. I would like to offer my support in regards to his appeal. His management, his ability to lead, and his competence are unquestioned as a direct result of the complaint filed against him. I am here to shed some insight into his management from an employee standpoint. The manner and management style that I have the pleasure of working for has been by far one of the best I've ever worked with under. He is a hands-on manager, a personable, down-to-earth manager who is passionate about law enforcement, his job, and genuinely cares about the community that he serves. Some examples of his management are his respect for his staff, his strong family beliefs, his knowledge, his professionalism, his thinking skills, his leadership, his hard work ethic, his values, and his infinite dedication to this department. I witnessed Chief Dominguez's dedication and hard work in various ways. One of my least favorite was his ability to pop in out of nowhere. I mean, who doesn't cringe when the boss is around? I can attest to him keying up on the radio out of nowhere and hating to hear the words 100 feet. In radio talk, this meant he was announcing himself and managed to pick up on us. Usually, we least expected it, and typically when he was supposed to be off duty. Out of the blue, there was our chief, on a traffic stop, arresting a bad guy, nonetheless keeping us on our toes. More importantly, he was ensuring that we were all doing our job and protecting the city. Receiving a phone call in the middle of the night was not out of the norm for this man either. At first, I thought he was picking on me when he would call the landline to question the dispatch. I quickly learned quite the opposite. This man was actually demonstrating even more of his dedication. You see, this could only mean that he was monitoring our police radio channel from his vehicle, on his personal time, or from home. So his phone calls in the middle of the night were not a matter of picking on me, but rather another part of his dedication to our city. I have watched and grown to admire this man and his management. When I had questions, he was a teacher. When I made errors, he was a corrector. When I needed
Excuse
work
me, I'm
support-
sorry, your time is up, but thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next, Jack and Helen Nicholson. Please come to the podium and state your name and address.
We'll make sure we keep it short. Jack and I both certainly support Chief Dominguez. He's been very supportive to us individually and has been done a superior job controlling the cut through traffic at the restaurant and other issues relative to the business activity.
Thank you. Jessica Checkle?
Hello, Mayor, council members. My name is Jesse Pacheco. I've lived in Balcones Heights for close to 35 years. I'm in support of Chief Dominguez. I'm not happy how the mayor and the council have handled this issue at all. I'm not prepared that you gave it to Amy as a form of her doing what she's done. I place that on the mayor's desk. I think the mayor and the council should have addressed this rather than passing the ball to somebody else. In my many years in Balcones Heights, I've only seen 2 other chiefs. To me, Mr. Dominguez has been the better chief we've had. Okay? And I'm serious on this, because it's a reflection on the mayor and some of your council members. I dislike it. I dislike you placing him guilty before anything else was assessed. Okay? And it's on your shoulders. I know you guys don't listen well to the city as citizens. I'm very unhappy with your performance. Bottom line, Mr. Dominguez has been unjustly crucified through the use of your city administrator. Her action, I really think, is based on your direction. And I'm very unhappy with your performance as elected officials. Bottom line. Thank you.
Next we have Ray Wilkinson. Ray, are you here? Please come and state your name and address. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Wilkinson.
My name is Ray Wilkinson. I'm the field representative of the Texas Municipal Police Association. Our address is 6200 Calma in Austin, Texas. And I'm here on behalf of the Balcones Heights Police Association, Police Officers Association, and the citizens that support the Police Association. I'm here really to request that you follow through with the recommendation of the city manager, Ms. Butler.
Would you speak a little closer to the mic?
Sorry. I'm sure her decision arising with this was not made lightly. And the fact that she is a longtime resident of the San Antonio area, I believe she has the city's best interest at heart whenever she made this decision, which I'm sure was a tough decision. question here is that she is the chief operating officer and has everyday contact with the employees within the city. And, you know, why was I asked here to speak on behalf of the Police Officers Association is the fact that they feel that they can't come out and speak for themselves about fear of retaliation. The members of the association first delivered the letter of no confidence on the chief based on several issues. And I'm not going to go into all of them, but the main issue was a hostile work environment. The reports in this company, officers of public belittling in front of subordinate officers, which I think is not the proper way to run a police department. That should be done behind closed doors. Pattern of fear of retaliation, obviously, if what was not to the chief's liking specifically on some issues that may have been for the better of the department, or better in the department. And because of this lack of leadership and general direction or forward direction of the department, there's been a very low morale issue here, where something to consider as some of the best and brightest officers who have a ton of experience are considering leaving the department because they feel the working conditions here are not adequate. I guess in the end, the issue here is you have a huge decision to make, the future of the department. And the longer that this issue hangs over the city council and department, the longer it's going to take to fix. And you want to make sure that you keep the best and brightest of the department. I think in considering what to do, think about what the long-term ramifications are if you choose to overturn the city manager's decision.
There's a point of order. You stopped the previous lady.
I just,
Stop the previous lady.
Excuse
me, sir. Mayor,
Wait, that's why I'm saying a point of order.
You just said he has 30 seconds left.
30 seconds, that's much more time than we gave the previous lady.
I'm just, real quick, I hope you make the right decision on this so we can put it to rest. Thank you.
thank you very much. James Gordon?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is James Gardner. I live at 212 Glenarm. As a retired Army officer with over 37 years experience, I've seen my share of leadership. I've worked directly under at least 5 general officers being on their staff. I know about being led, being a follower. I've been to the gates of hell with at least one of those generals, and I would do it again for that individual. I have also had to work under officers I have no confidence in. It is a terrible position to be in. The trust between the leader and the led, once broken, cannot, in most circumstances, be reestablished. I have no position directly with the former chief. I've had limited contact with him. I do not know his leadership style or how he drops in. However, our rank and file, as represented by their organization, has gone on record, literally stuck their collective necks out to say they have lost confidence in their former chief's leadership. Just how can they follow a leader they have lost their confidence in? I'll tell you, they can't, and they won't. They have many options for employment outside of Balcony Heights. They are in a enviable position of having a lot of skill with a lot of other communities needing their experience. I wish everyone to take that into consideration as well. Thank you.
Now, one I have before me is Dresslinger.
My name is Joyce Pena, and I've been employed with the city of Balcones Heights for over 30 years. I am not a member of the association, nor am I campaigning for the chief's position, although I have been delegated the position in his absence. During the time that Henry Dominguez has been chief, I've noticed some disturbing leadership tactics, which is mainly divide and conquer, leading by fear and intimidation. I've watched this department go from being one big happy family to where everybody just hates to even show up for work. And I guess I didn't realize the impact it had on the officers because I'm in my own little world upstairs in investigations. And it wasn't until Henry left that I started hearing from all the officers that, they suddenly became interested in doing their jobs again. They were coming up with all sorts of ideas on different things that we could use for the betterment of the department, all of which I didn't see while Henry Dominguez was in command. I know a lot of you business owners have seen the nice and charming side of Henry Dominguez. I, on the other hand, have seen the other side, where I've been belittled, degraded, demeaned, intimidated, and embarrassed in front of my subordinates. I have never been treated that way in the 30 years I've been here in Balcones by any of the chiefs that I've served under. And that, to me, is inexcusable when it comes to a leader. And every time that he wanted me to be a supervisor, he would belittle me and say that he didn't want me to be mom. And what he would classify as being mom is if I didn't curse out and intimidate and use the same tactics that he did when he was speaking to one of the officers. In fact, he even told me that he was going to write me up if I did not do as he said, as far as doing his belittling tactics. So I just want you to know that I believe in Amy's decision. I know it was a hard one. And also I believed all these years that the city council was pro-police. And I respect each and every one of you. However, we've come to question, are you pro-police? Are you pro-Dominguez? Because you have the police officers saying, we don't want this man. Everybody is unanimous saying, we don't want him.
20 seconds.
So just take that into consideration.
Ms. Flores, that was all. You signed up for that. We're going to be going into, for clarification, Mr. Garza, once we go into our business item, the citizens will not have an opportunity to speak. Is that true? Okay.
Here will be
Thank you. Okay, thanks. So if there should be another citizen that would like to speak, this is your only opportunity. So I'll give another couple of people come up. No? Yes? Did you want to speak? Please come up and state your name and address, and then you've got 3 minutes.
My name is Cecilia Garden. I live at 212 Glenarm. I am supporting Ms. Bucket and the setting determination of Ms. Henry Dominguez. I like him as a guy. He's a nice guy, but I don't like hearing that my police officers who protect my back and my home being belittled and demeaned. That's unacceptable in leadership. Some of the stuff that I have read is the Open Records Act, where records have been changed after they've been filed, is, in my opinion, illegal. I've been a nurse for 39 years. If I were to do that, I would be fired. If I were to do that, I would lose my license. I would never be allowed to perform that duties again. I support you. Amy, I support you, Suzanne, and I pray that you uphold the decision that has been made by our city manager. She's done her job after a great deal of heartbreak and study and has made an intelligent decision. Thank you.
We're gonna, yes. Would you like to speak? All right.
My name is Miguel Valverde. I live at 214 Pleasant. I'd like to make a couple of comments. First of all, I'm not here to judge or make decisions. I'm simply expressing my opinion and concerns as a resident of this community. I know Chief Dominguez, and he's a wonderful and caring person with the intention of doing the right thing for this community and has accomplished a lot of positive things. As a citizen of this community, I feel that we have to support our city administrator. She was hired by council and gave her the authority to hire and fire. The decision to fire Mr. Henry Dominguez was not an easy one, but she felt it is necessary for the benefit of this community. Council members should support her decision and not protest against her. I have a concern with our elected officials' leadership simply because it is not good to go against a decision made by an authorized authority. This is a morale buster and leaves mixed feelings amongst employees. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to business items. Number 1, appeal of Henry Dominguez termination as chief of police in accordance with personnel rules. Ms. Becker, would you like to go ahead and start with the presentation?
What I'm going to do tonight is just walk the council and the citizens through the termination letter, the notice of termination. The termination was based on my lack of confidence in Henry Dominguez's ability to do the job of police chief. My concerns date back to 2011 when a grievance was filed and he was given a written reprimand. Issues cited were issues with his leadership, building trust and goodwill in the community, and concerns with truthfulness in his responses to me. Because of these issues, we agreed to a professional coaching program to improve his performance. This was a program that the city paid for that was personal, just he and the coach, and it was a 5-month program that was afforded to no other department head.
Excuse me, can everyone hear?
In May of this year, a complaint was submitted by an officer that stated that Mr. Dominguez was made aware of an officer's possible gang affiliations. That officer was Officer Casino. Although, when we had meetings with him, the chief told us numerous times that he had no knowledge of this. In fact, he even said that he wouldn't have known what the 13 meant if he had seen it. These meetings were held with the mayor and with the city attorney. He later admitted in the investigation that he did, in fact, receive this information from his officers that he was told. He didn't take any action to investigate whether their claims were valid or not. He didn't think there was enough merit in there to initiate an investigation. Based on these issues, based on the history of poor leadership in the department, the inaction in addressing concerns about Officer Casina, and my lack of confidence in his abilities to lead the department, I terminated his employment effective July 1. In determining whether the action with respect to the employee, for the personnel policies, in determining whether its action with respect to any employee will promote the efficiency of service, the city shall consider the following: whether the prior history, conduct, work-related experience, or performance of the individual evidences that the individual may not reasonably be expected to perform the job duties at an acceptable level of performance. And also under conduct, the conduct detrimental to the proper order, discipline, and morale of city employees. Any conduct on becoming public knowledge would impair the confidence of the public in the integrity of city government or in the relationship of the employee and other employees. I do want to make clear, I don't want to dismiss the good things that Mr. Dominguez did do for our community. He did do good things for our community. It's just that based on
the complaints that came to light, based on my lack of confidence in his abilities, I felt the need that termination is the only way to move the city forward at this point. Ms. Bucker. Mr. Sanchez.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, good evening. My name is Mark Anthony Sanchez, and I am the attorney that Henry Dominguez has hired to present his grievance this evening. I want to thank you for your time and your attention. There's been a significant amount of rumor and innuendo swirling around the
Can you speak to the microphone, please?
swirling around the reasons that are offered by the city to terminate Mr. Dominguez. What I want to do is put rumor and innuendo aside. Let's focus on facts. On facts that I think will assist you to make a fairly easy decision, and that is to grant Mr. Dominguez's grievance. He's asking for four things. The first is that you reverse the city administrator's decision to terminate, that you immediately reinstate him, that you award him compensation he's lost as a result of this termination, and for his legal fees he's incurred in defending his good name and fighting for his job. Now, you've heard some comments about the Police Officers Association and the role of the city administrator. But remember, you're the final authority. You are the final boss for all decisions that are made of the city. It is not enough to pass the buck to the administrator of the association. It's no surprise to me that you're going to have some supported officers take a vote of popularity and want to go a different direction. But we don't do that. Your department heads report to the city administrator and they report to the city council. So keep that in mind. That is the line of authority. If we were to make decisions based on popularity contests, you'd be shifting chiefs in and out every 6 months. And that's not the way you do good business. What we're here to do is review the decision made by one person, Amy Bucker, regarding Henry Dominguez's employment. So let's keep our eye on the ball. And that's an important point. We're in the baseball season. And one thing the coach will always tell you is keep your eye on the ball, keep your eye on the facts. Let me start from the beginning. The date that Henry Dominguez was hired was back in October of 2009. He was hired by a different city administrator. I believe his name is Mr. Page. So when Ms. Bucker came on board, she inherited this chief, because she inherited a number of other employees. He was brought to Balcones Heights based on a resume that you'll see at Exhibit 1. A resume that contains 20 years of experience serving in law enforcement community, serving small communities just like yours in Poteet and Atascosa County. He was a good hire then, he's a good hire now. If you review his resume, especially when we get to the point where we compare the accusations made against him by one of the junior officers, keep that in mind. This is a man with an extensive resume of accomplishments, and not just before he came Balcones Heights, but you yourself know a number of grants and money-saving measures that he implemented to make the police department operate better and to make Balcones Heights operate better. So that is the starting point. Now, when we look at the decision was made by Ms. Bucker. She's explained the rationale. I think it's important, though, to look at some motives. Look at the history between Ms. Bucker and Mr. Dominguez. And you're going to have to make the determination as to whether it was fair, whether it was just, whether the decision was made, as you were told, based on experience or based on personal animus. Personal prejudice. And in order to do that, I'd ask you to take a look at what is marked as Exhibit 3. What you have here is an email. Actually, it starts with you, Mr. Gilliam. An email that you circulated in July of 2011, actually to a quorum of city council members. And you raised some very important policy points, Mr. Gilliam. You asked Ms. Buckard whether or not using impound fees was a good way to justify paying police salaries. Henry Dominguez opposed it. Now, in making your points, Mr. Gilliam, you were professional, you were open, you were honest. And in that exhibit, you'll find Ms. Buckard's response, dated July 28, 2011 at 8:56. Now, why is the summer of 2011 important? Because, according to Ms. Buckard's report, that is when she began to, quote, lose confidence in the chief, summer of 2011. Now, in a municipality, you're going to have some pretty vigorous, even passionate disagreements about policy. But as the mayor pointed out at the beginning, we do so civilly. We do so with respect. And we do so with the aim of making the team better, not making it worse. We make it with the purpose of building the team up, not dividing it. So what does Ms. Buckard say in her email? It's something that I found particularly offensive as a Mexican American and as someone who supports police officers. She refers to interacting with Henry Dominguez as wrestling a greased pig. It's there in writing. It's as you look in black and white. Now, for those of you with the history in South Texas, those of you who understand the long history of Mexican American police, there's nothing appropriate about using the word greasy or greased towards your first Hispanic chief of police. More importantly, we're talking about your highest ranking police officer. Who in the world would think of referring to the chief of police as a pig? Now you can ask every police officer here what the worst pejorative insult they can receive in the field, and that's to be called a pig. That the only people who refer to police officers as pigs are drug dealers, drug users, thugs, home invaders, and every other bad person that needs to be put in jail. When I talk to Henry about that, he says, you know, the only time I've been called that is usually when I'm wrestling or fighting with someone to get him into custody. I've been spat on, I've been punched, I've been assaulted. So ask yourselves, is that the mentality, is that the motive of a fair-minded person that would refer to a Mexican-American chief of police as a greased pig? Is that the kind of leadership that you expect from the city administrator? I hope not. Because that would be a sad, sad statement on what kind of leadership the city council can provide. That email is there for you to see, for everyone to see. And I think what it does is it sets the stage, not for a fair evaluation of Henry Dominguez's job performance, but for someone with a clearly pronounced prejudice towards him and towards police officers. This is akin to being the Jane Fonda city administrator. You give aid and comfort to those that refer to your police officers as pigs. That's what it is. It shouldn't be tolerated. It should be repudiated without hesitation. So that's July of 2011, where your city administrator is referring to your chief of police as a greased pig. It sets the stage for every other comment and evaluation that Ms. Buckard made about the chief. Now, let's move forward to what started this entire ordeal, and that's a tragic death of Julian C. Here's some facts that we will be aware of. There's been no finding by SAPD or the FBI that this person was a member of a gang or affiliated with a gang. That's what I mean. Keep your eye on the ball. Don't let conjecture and rumor and innuendo cloud your judgment. Whatever you may say about his tattoos, whether it's approve or disapprove, that's a standard that's going to apply to every police officer on the force that has tattoos. Keep your eye on the ball. Keep your eye on the ball. Now, it is interesting and coincidental to me that Kenneth Ortiz, a 3-year junior officer is the one who 2 or 3 weeks after Julian Casino's gunned down right down the road, decides to file a written complaint. Now, that written complaint is so flimsy, you can drive a truck through it. There are gaps in dates and times, a lack of specificity as to what was said and done, and more importantly, there's not a single other piece of evidence, a written statement offered by any of the officer in support of what Kenneth O'Lease states. So a lot of this boils down to who you believe. Do you believe Henry Dominguez with the service he's provided to the city, a 20-year resume, or do you believe Kenneth O'Lease? It's going to come down to a decision based on credibility. Now, there are a lot of documents that float around, police officers, phones, pictures, and I received several demonstrating exactly how professional Mr. O'Lease takes this position. Take a look at page 8. Okay. Exhibit 8. This is Kenneth O'Lease. Everybody can see. That's your Balcones Heights fires. In full uniform at the station. Now this is the officer who's under the emergency.
I find that to be offensive.
It is
Take that
offensive.
down.
It is offensive. It is offensive. It's a very good point. This is the officer who's going to pull you over and who's going to give a statement besmirching the name of your former chief. Look at the facts. A picture speaks 1,000 words. Keep your eye on the ball. Do not give in to innuendo and false accusations. Now, you have in your packet Chief Dominguez's very last employment evaluation. Please turn to Exhibit 5. What you have before you is his May 20th, 2013 annual evaluation. This is 2 years after Ms. Buckard claimed to have lost confidence in Henry Dominguez. If we look at it, and I've reviewed every single category, from the first to the last, in every category, Ms. Buckard rated Mr. Dominguez as above standards. So how do you reconcile that? How do you have someone who says that in 2011 I lost confidence in the chief, yet in 2013, almost a year to the date he was terminated, gives an outstanding evaluation? How do you reconcile that? Why are we dredging
What
up?
date is that?
This is Exhibit 5, data review, May 20th, 2013. Yes, sir. What I'm referring to, Mr. Gillian, is the actual category. If you look at number 1 under planning, there's an X by the category called above standard. And that's what I was referring to, the categories.
The rating as a whole is from 0 to 40 points. He received 43 points. He met expectation. He was not outstanding.
What I'm referring to, and this is my presentation of the grievance, is the ratings per category are above standard. Fair enough? Above standard in every single category.
Still stand by my statement.
Very well. You'll see that in every category, all 11, all 11 in each and every category, Henry Dominguez is rated above standard within a year of his termination. Now, getting back to this statement offered by Ken O'Lease, that's really what started this. If Julian Casino had not been tragically murdered, we wouldn't be here today. And for all the complaints that you've heard about his alleged demeanor in the workplace, that's not part of the reason stated. Every officer that works here understands full well what their grievance rights are. If someone feels they're being belittled, they can do what Henry Dominguez did and file a grievance. And that wasn't done. was not particularly fair to say, oh, well, now that we're here, let me tell you about this long list of things I had complaints about, but I never told them. I never followed procedure. I never invoked my rights in grievance procedures. That's not fair. If you have a complaint, stand up, stand by it, make it, and have a decision made. The way I'm doing on behalf of Mr. Menendez. I think what the record shows is tremendous inconsistency between what Ms. Buckert alleges is a lack of leadership versus what's contained in the written record. The written evaluations, her own comments about them, and shared with the council. Now, what was interesting, Mr. Gillett, in that email, you asked, Amy, at the very end, keep this secret. Keep it confidential. You didn't want it to get out. And knowing that no one else would probably be looking, that's when Ms. Buckert decided to characterize the chief. You're at a crossroads tonight, literally and figuratively. You have a choice, a chance, to vindicate Henry Dominguez and give him an opportunity to prove himself again, as his resume illustrates. Or you can stand behind this sort of decision. There is some poor leadership. There is some poor leadership, a lack of vision, a lack of fairness, a lack of judgment that exists about these matters. It's not Henry Dominguez. It's the shabby way it has been treated with false allegations and statements that don't make sense by officers who are embarrassment to themselves and to the department for the way they behave. Do the right thing. Say, no, we're not going to make decisions about people this way. If Henry Dominguez commits a policy violation, we'll own up to it. But to be hung out in this manner is an injustice. So tonight I'm asking you, here in front of everyone in the audience, do the right thing. Give him the justice he's been denied. Reinstate him immediately. Thank you.
Ms. Perry, would you like to respond to any of Mr. Sanchez' comments?
I would just like to read the paragraph that he's referring to in its totality, because I never called the chief of police. The paragraph states, I welcome these discussions as I share some of the same concerns and have had very little luck getting a response. And trying to put disciplinary actions in place on him is like wrestling with his spin. There is always something he finds to wiggle out of, and we have a problem in our hands. And I think that's evident. I think with regard to the performance evaluation, it's an indicator of an up and down performance. It's not consistent performance, and that's been my issue. He improves and then backsides, improves and backsides. That's all I wish to say.
So we've heard from Ms. Beckert, we've heard from Mr. Sanchez. Now it's time for the council to say the comments. There's a lot of it right down the road, and we'll start on this part. Please sit closer to the mic. Thank you.
When this very first started, you told council that there was a complaint filed against the chief, and it had to be investigated, and it was procedure that he automatically be put on administrative leave. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When there was when we received a criminal investigation which named you and gave dates and times, why were you not immediately, if we followed policy and procedures, put on admin leave?
I'm glad you asked that, because I asked the same question of the city attorney.
Ma'am? Excuse me.
There's a chair up there, sir, you can take that one.
With regards to the decision of placing the city administrator on,
That's not, please.
the decision on whether to place the city manager or city administrator on administrative leave pending investigation is the decision of the mayor and council as a whole. Prior to you, the council, or I don't even know if you ever considered The complaint went directly to the district attorney's office, did not come to the city, and that complaint was immediately dismissed by the district attorney.
Well, it was dismissed a few days later. However, council was never, we never had a meeting of any type to see what action should be, and it just appears that there's a double standard here.
The council, like I said, is the one that decides.
And the
you
council
could've-
did not decide this.
Right, and so it's not on Ms. Buckert, it's on the council.
That doesn't make any sense, but thank you very much. I did not know that we could go back to 2011. I really didn't think we could go back that far. But I interpret that grease pig letter quite differently than you do. And that was very inappropriate. But the question I would like to ask you, I think, is, in everything I've read, everything, you deal with two people, which is the mayor and our former mayor pro tem. What did you think those two people, you know our form of government, where council is the ones who make the decision. The mayor is a figurehead. Why did you not bring your concerns, if you had all these concerns, to council? What did you think those two people could do for you?
The email that was sent out was sent among budget committee because we were talking about a budget committee issue back then.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. But frankly, when I'm cussed out at my office for the decisions that I make and treated with such blatant disrespect, it makes it very difficult to communicate with many of you.
I would not know, but certainly you could bring that up to council also.
I have brought that up to council.
Perhaps it was the 2 years I wasn't here. I don't remember that. And then why did we, council found themselves watching the news and reading the newspapers like everyone else did to find out what was going on. Nothing was sent to us until after it came out in the mail, in the newspaper. I'm very upset that we were denied the complaint that Officer Ortiz sent until 2.5 days after the television people had it. That totally is unconscionable.
Miss Paul, I'd like to redirect you that this meeting tonight that you called is regarding former Chief Henry Dominguez, not our city administrator. So I believe that this,
I apologize.
excuse me, it's comments are appropriate.
I apologize.
So if you'll keep your questions directed, or your comments.
I apologize. You are correct. At this time, I think, when this first happened, was there any mention or any thought of a polygraph between the chief and Officer Ortiz or anything? I mean, in order, I guess, we spend a lot of money on this. And was there any attempt to resolve this prior to, even before we even got to something like this?
Yes, ma'am, I did talk to the chief about a possible separation agreement, including a severance package. We tried to negotiate that on 3 different occasions.
I asked with the option for rebuttal.
I'm mortified by the race car being thrown out. I can't even believe that. I grew up on a South Texas ranch, and the only people that I know that wrestled race pigs were white cowboys. So I'm just shocked that that would be pulled out as part of your defense. That's absolutely ridiculous in my personal opinion. We have a city administrator for a reason. If council is to be doing the administration, then we all need to quit our jobs and leave the offices up here and relieve any duties.
Don't we have to ask questions?
Let's skip our comments right now and do it regarding.
Right, well, in response to what the lawyer has said, I think everything's laid out there. I'm just a court that anyone would bring on a race car about the race car to leave first.
Mr. Brick?
First question I have is why
Check. Is that applicable to what I want to do, or can I not do that? I'm referring to a vote. I'm referring to a vote from the Police Officers Association.
You can refer to it, it just can't be, I mean, it's up to the council whether they want that to be a factor in the decision, but the decision really is the city manager's decision as to why she terminated. That is what is currently being appealed. The reference or the vote by the Police Officers Association is not a part of her decision to terminate.
Correct. But it is part of my thought process, because you can't spit in this city without people knowing. The rumors fly rampant, as crazy as they are. And what my idea was, I've got a box in the next room, in the break room, and here I have pieces of paper here that say confidence and no confidence, because I was told by citizens that other officers had confided in that some people voted no confidence because retaliation purposes. And my papers here, each officer can have 2 pieces of paper, one at a time, go in that room, put their paper in a box, one at a time, throw the other piece of paper away, and that way I know that it's 100% no confidence. And that was one of my concerns. I feel Henry's done a great job here at Balcones Heights, but I respect also the city manager's position, and as Madeline Slade, I don't get paid to run this city. I just come up here and try to make the best decisions I can make. And that was one of my little ideas that I've come up with, just in fairness for the Police Officers Association, to just do a little random vote, and if they would humor me, I would appreciate it. And there is no winner in this situation for me. I adore Henry, I adore Amy. I think the world of both of these individuals. But I have a question to Mr. Dominguez, and when the time is right, he can come up and hopefully explain it to me. But knowing how many people in this room have no confidence in you, and that's the reason for my little abrupt vote, is how can you come back here and lead these people on that have no confidence in you? Because if you come back to lead these people, we're going to lose a lot of these great officers here. And I would hate to see that happen, because I know each of these individual officers here, and I have my confidence in those guys. I trust them with my protection. I've ridden with these guys. I see what they go through on a daily basis, and I respect what they do.
In response to your question, how can I lead this man exactly how I done before? These gentlemen are a product of my design. They have worked for me for the last 5 years, and what they do is a reflection of what I've asked them to do for the city. I've asked them to be proactive. I've asked them to be assertive. I've asked them to be very public friendly. And they've done that, and they've been good officers. These officers are police officers. As police officers, we are trained to follow our leader. Right now, they're following Amy as their leader. When I come back, they will follow me, because that's what they're trained to do. And I'm very confident that the majority of them will follow me without problem. There's 1 or 2 that may have animosities based on previous experience, But as their boss, it's my job to put them to work. And in putting them to work, a lot of times, they may not want to work. And I'm sorry, but I believe in earning your keep. I've always lived under that principle, and I've always worked hard for my money. And being their leader, I expect the same of them. And all these officers will tell you, I have been side by side with them out in the field. I have helped them with investigations. Ms. Bailey will tell you that anytime there was an issue, she came to me as a source, a resource. So that the investigators, there's times that I even took cases on, cases that I felt dear to my heart, child abuse cases, that I felt so strongly about it that I volunteered to take that case. And because of that, I set the standard that these officers will follow.
And I respect what you say, but I'm just gonna do a what if. If I was Ken Ortiz and you came back, I would worry every morning that I walked through those doors, come back to work every morning wondering what's gonna happen to me and when is it gonna happen to me. And that's my biggest concern is can you win the confidence of these officers who are under you and
yes, sir.
without worry. I mean, I know that the law says that, if you were to come back, nothing's to happen to them, yada, yada, yada. But in reality, if I walk through that door, I would worry every day that my job is on the line, and if I've got a family and children to support, where is my money going to come from, and my benefits going to come from? That's one of my concerns.
I know exactly the feeling, trust me. That's exactly what I'm going through. And no, I would never put anybody through what I've been through for the last couple of weeks. It is very stressful. It's very hard. And I've always been about family. I've always been about supporting these gentlemen, these officers. That's why I've offered them training. I've given them the best equipment I could possibly get. I've even taken out for the forfeiture fund to provide equipment, top quality equipment, not just standard equipment, but above standard equipment, so that they can do their job safely, so they can perform their duties without having to worry. Mr. Ortiz has nothing to worry about me or any of my other officers. All I ask is that they do their job. That's all I ask. That's all I've always ever asked of them, is to do their job. And if they'll do that, they have nothing to worry about.
And then I think my final question is, referring to a news paper article and television article of the scene of death. Were you ever asked about his gang affiliation, if he had gang tattoos? What was that dialogue?
You talking about Mr. Ortiz?
No.
Or just general
Officer Julian Casino.
No. But asked by Mr. Ortiz?
By Mr. Ortiz.
Okay, no. No, there's never no gang affiliation conversation. The conversation that we had was a tattoo policy conversation. As you can see, Mr. Ortiz does have tattoos on his arms. And imposing a tattoo policy would make him wear long sleeves. And as he stated to me, he's a big guy, and long sleeves in the summer would not work for him. So that was his objection to the tattoo policy, not gang tattoos. And that was a conversation that we had.
And I'm just out of curiosity, Mr. Ortiz, where did you have your tattoos done at? Did you have them done at Christina's parlor?
Yes. My stars. I was supposed to say, hey, policy, if I ever wear long sleeves, I wear long sleeves. I have my beard. I said, hey, if you ever have a problem with it, I shave my beard. So it's never going to get you free. The issue of gang tattoos is a problem in many occasions.
And with respect to that, why was it never, ever, ever put in writing prior to Officer Julian Casino's death?
I felt like here's my God life.
I hold citizens to a standard. I hold police officers to another standard. I hold a police chief to another standard. And I think that it was wrong that you did not document that some way, shape, or form other than talking at a Starbucks. I think that's all I'm saying.
First of all, I'd like to say that I've shared this place soon about 10 degrees later. big as a accomplishment. Trying to catch this, hard to try to catch this. The fact that it was used, Mr. Dominguez in the case, it's probably sensitive to understand, but it is a common term in real life. The fact that Ken Ortiz was in the street before things went in the air. Having served in the military, I know that military guys do stupid things like that too. Military guys do stupid things like that too. And I don't think it's an accurate reflection on your personality. I think it's venting. Now, if you started throwing a finger at people on the street and you stopped them, I think you know you're doing the wrong thing. Right? In regards to the comment that I asked Amy to keep this email secret, what I said was, due to the sensitivity of what I've written here, please hold it in confidence. I see nothing more of that. I'm just asking for a little consideration. Hear this out later. This was a budget committee memo. It wasn't a council memo. I believe someone said that there was a quorum present in this memo. I may be wrong, but I see Charlie Mathis, Suzanne Daly, and you America, right? Myself and you in the conversation. These two individuals, you and I had a conversation. These two individuals were hot. So I could be wrong, Frank. Is that open meetings, that violation? If it is, I'm sorry.
No, sir, under the general law, a city, the mayor does not count toward a quorum. But even if the mayor did count, that's only 3 individuals.
Thank you. That's what I thought. Now, I've got a statement. Bear with me, it's a little long. But I think we need to get this out here. In your package, Amy, at the beginning, you make this statement. Somehow this appeal has been reduced by some to an issue of city administrator versus police chief. This appeal is about whether Henry Dominguez is the best individual for the position of police chief in the city. The issues outlined below have led me to my lack of confidence in his abilities. This, combined with the excessive legal maneuvering / cost and the excessive negative media attention forced upon the city when he was provided multiple options for peaceful and respectful departure, clearly demonstrate he is not. Should the city council decide they are displeased with my management style, they need to address that as a separate issue, not make a poor long-term decision that negatively impacts the city and the citizens and business operators of this town by reinstating Mr. Dominguez. I thought it was an excellent opening, good start to your memo. Here are my comments. Before I make these comments, I'd like to call the chief, Mr. Dominguez, the fire chief of police, up to the podium, because I have a question. Henry, I thought we always had a good relationship. I don't know what was the word, council ends, animosity towards you all. In fact, let it be on record, the last 2 times that you've been in chambers after this, I've gone up and greeted you as a person. Because I think you can disagree with somebody, but you can still be a decent person and treat them with respect. If you recall, and if I'm wrong, please tell me so, but in the presence of the city administrator, we were going over some issues about the PD while I was still Mayor Pro Tem. And you made the comment that you were concerned about your position. Remember that about 3 months ago? You remember my comment to you? I said, Henry, that's the last thing I want is to start over and develop a new police chief. I did say that. Yes. I just want to set that straight before I make these comments. Because there's some things in here that are going to be said that I don't want to be misunderstood by my new position. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. I believe the city administrator makes a great summary defending her decision to terminate the employment of Mr. Dominguez. In the opening paragraph, the city administrator clearly makes it understood that this is about Mr. Dominguez's inability to lead the police department of our city, an opinion unanimously shared by the BHPOA. I believe 16 members were present today. You voted on it, all 16 verified.
just want to clarify that for you. I did say 16 at the last meeting. I was wrong. I'm sorry for that. But here, it's actually 14 members. Our president is not allowed to vote, so he's the only one who did not vote. All the other 13 members voted unanimously.
Thank you.
To write that down.
Thank you. I agree that if certain members want to address the city administrator's management style, that it should be done as a separate issue. However, I think that for clarity, we need to understand the underlying current that is interfering with sound leadership and has constantly interfered with the city administrator's role in running our city. It is excuse me. It is interesting to note in that in Exhibit J of this memo that the city administrator prepared, that the city administrator chose to address the effort made by council members Linda Pope and Charles White in the September and October 2011 regularly scheduled city council meetings to introduce a motion that would have taken away the city administrator's authority to hire and directly supervise the fire department and the police department of our city. The first attempt was an executive session in September. Quite frankly, I was surprised to see it again the following month because I thought it had been settled at the time. When it did come up again in October's meeting, I recall over 15 citizens coming to the podium to speak against it. An overwhelming majority of no's do not change the organization chart. Despite that, the motion was still made, and members Pohl and White still voted for it. Fortunately, the motion was defeated in a 3-2 vote. I also find it interesting that this motion to reorganize the city government came a short 4 months after the city administrator gave a written remand to the then Chief Dominguez. Only on the job for a short 6 months, the city administrator had begun witnessing his questionable leadership. Some would criticize the city administrator for such a move after only a short time on the job. I, on the contrary, extend pure praise for the courage to take on such an unpleasant task. That took a lot of intestinal fortitude, what we in the Army used to call guts. We took that to face the issue head on, that being poor performance as outlined in the letter of reprimand. Then after a withering attack on the city administrator's professionalism in September and October 2011 council meetings, the city administrator continued to be attacked by Mrs. Pohl when in the city administrator's first performance review, Mrs. Pohl gave the city administrator straight zeros on the 9 elements of the review.
That's personal and private.
Notably without any
Point of order,
narrative
that's
explanation.
personal and private. That should not be, that has nothing to do with this meeting. Point of order.
Speaking.
Get into what is going on tonight is regarding
Get
the
there.
appeal. It has to be,
It's called the Privacy Act, you are.
I already discussed this with the administrator, she was fine.
But I'm not.
I'm not.
But as part of her memo, which is presented tonight for review, I got a memo, it's in the memo. Absolutely, all of this is in her memo. Have you seen this memo? It's in your,
Not about the full confusion.
I'm speaking to this memo. I can't speak to
let's
this memo.
go back on task now. This is about, I'll be here. Is there, you want to hold that for later?
No, I'll cut in where it comes to the appeal.
Unless we'll stop here.
Okay, I want you to stop here. In this memo, where you discuss the shortcomings of the chief, there's one element that you left out. Quite frankly, I was a little surprised that we didn't get into more detail about what you presented here. My comment is, We're not here to explore your relationship with council, and I realize that. We'll do that in another meeting coming up on the 28th. We're here to see if the city administrator had just cause to terminate the employment of Mr. Dominguez based on the city administrator's summary and the defense provided by Mr. Dominguez himself and his attorney tonight. I believe that the city administrator not only had the right to terminate his employment, but she had the obligation to do so. I know of one item that the city administrator chose not to address that I believe warrants mentioning when considering the leadership abilities of Mr. Dominguez. During his tenure, on more than one occasion, weapons were lost by officers. One was a Glock handgun. Much more serious was an AR-15 assault rifle. This weapon, somewhat similar to the Vietnam-era M16, which was my assigned weapon when I served in Vietnam in 71 and 72, is a very powerful and deadly rifle. It can fire multiple rounds in a short period of time and has extended range capabilities. This loss occurred sometime in July of 2013. It is my understanding that Chief Dominguez closely held this information for 3 weeks before notifying the city administrator. That speaks volumes about his leadership and also about his integrity. Not to mention the obvious lack of control of these weapons. It makes me shudder to think what may have transpired during that 3-week period of time. The weapons were being left in unmanned patrol cars locked in their gun racks. Obviously, one weapon was not locked properly and was apparently stolen. Having handled such weapons in the military, I know that our issued weapons were individually assigned forms and taken from our armory, and were assigned back into the armory on serial number and secured once our shift was completed. I believe a similar practice is now standard operating procedure for our police department. The city administrator mentioned that in the fall of 2012, a bust of 8 minor machines occurred at the convenience store at the corner of Bluegrass and Balcones.
And I object to the fact that you, Mayor, said that we needed to ask direct questions. And Mr. Gomez was doing great in asking pertinent questions, but now we're in twilight zone, I don't know, on his personal opinion. This whole thing started with Dylan Personi's death. What the heck have we come to? I'm being very, very honest. Is it every, okay, thank you.
Yeah, put my statement. I believe this is not about who made the same mistake. I believe it's about the leadership of the police department. Thank you.
I have some questions. I have asked in executive session some of this, so Chief, I'll direct it towards you. The week of May 12th through the 16th, that was a week you were told to take administrative leave. There were 2 meetings that week. Do you remember who was present, what you talked about, and basically what happened that week that you were told to take sick leave?
Yes, sir, for clarification, it was sick leave. Yes, sir. Prior to the request to take sick leave, I did have a meeting with Mr. Demian, Mayor DeLeon, and Ms. Parker, and it was to give a report on the murder of Mr. Demian. And I gave them a briefing of what I knew as I just returned back from San Antonio Police Headquarters and was given a briefing by San Antonio Police Chief William McManus. So I expressed my report to them, at which point, of course, they had concern with the media and the public perception of the city. At that point, we discussed how we were going to work past this. We called the PR firm, and they gave us advice on how to handle this, and we did that, or we did it to a certain extent. The second meeting was actually with the mayor and Ms. Buckley, at which point they just made a comment that somebody had to go, something had to be done, and apparently it was going to be me. So I opposed that because I said I hadn't done anything wrong. And so then I had a meeting with Ms. Buckley, at which time she told me that she had consulted legal counsel, and I'd been advised to take sick leave for a week, but not really why. Just go home for a week and credit it to your sick leave. So I did. And then when I came back, that's when I had a meeting with Ms. Buckard, at which time she said that she had received a complaint, that as per policy I wasn't provided with a copy of the complaint. As a matter of fact, she didn't even provide me with the person making the complaint or the substance of the complaint. Told me to go home on administrative leave again and the complaint be forwarded to me. When we finally received the complaint, it was dated 2 days after I was let go home on administrative leave. And Ms. Buckard signed for it on Friday, which was actually 3 days later after I was put on administrative leave. So that's kind of how that happened.
Okay, well, I've never heard of anybody being told to take sick leave. And I had called you Monday, I believe it was the 19th, and you told me that you were told to take sick leave. And I called you because we had an NPR meeting. There was an item about reciprocal parking. So I wanted to get your idea on it. You said, well, Charlie, I won't be there. I'm on sick leave. So anyway, I called Amy, and Amy said that she had concerns that she'd been working a lot of hours, that she'd been having nightmares, and that you were told to take sick leave. I didn't say anything. And Amy said the mayor will be getting in touch with you to notify you of this. So a few days went by. It was that was the 19th, was Monday, and the 21st, I got a hold of Amy, and she's usually very good about getting back with me quickly. She said, I'll meet you Thursday in the morning. And she was there bright and early, which I said I was a morning person. She got there early. We talked about some things. And she said that you'd probably be back on the next Tuesday. And I said, well, what's going on? And she said, well, nothing much. You know, there's hearsay. So the whole point being is that was the 21st. This letter came out the 20th. I don't know if that's the day you received the complaint letter or not. But anyway, it's okay. The complaint letter is listed as the 20th, which would have been a Tuesday. I met with Amy on the 22nd. And then bingo, on the 23rd, Amy had a meeting out of town. She sent a update at around 2 in the afternoon, and then by 5:30, I had an email stating that you'd been placed on administrative leave. And so the whole point being is that what happened within 24 hours that, Amy, that it went from hearsay to this letter, which I read, the statement, that it warranted, that it had enough merit to go forward with as far as putting him on administrative leave and causing an investigation. Sure, take your time.
Tuesdays or?
Take your time, it's fine.
You're correct. May the 20th was a Tuesday, which is when the complaint was dated.
Was that, do you remember if that was the day you received it?
I don't recall. I want to say I received it the next day.
I believe I can fill in something. I don't remember the dates and I don't have that calendar with me, but it was in my office, in my box, inbox. And so it may have been there for a day or two before I called. So that could have been a discrepancy.
Okay.
Because I'm not there every day.
But I know the 23rd that you speak of, I was at an all-day seminar with the Director of Admin Services, and I was on the phone with the city attorney quite a bit throughout the day, trying to figure out how we were going to proceed with this, trying to set up interviews and things like that. So that is what transpired. We had to investigate correct. We had to investigate the complaint. We had to figure out how are we going to approach this. Is it something that he needs to go on leave for? Is it not? And get all the details sorted out. So that was what was transpiring in that time period.
Well, what I really appreciated at the time is that as soon as you made a decision, you informed us. It was like 2 days later I get a memo from the mayor stating that the chief's sick, which is neither here nor there at this point. But
I came back, I drove back from, I believe we were in San Marcos, and I came back that night, about late that afternoon, had the conversation with Henry, and then informed the council. I tried to get that out as quickly as I could when I got back to the office.
well, the 23rd, she got it out around 5:30. And Henry was on sick leave at the time, I believe. Still, but you said that on the 27th, which was Tuesday, that's when he would receive be placed on administrative leave.
Correct.
But so it was your decision with Frank's that y'all decided that this statement had enough merit to go forward in your investigation to warrant an investigation and to place him on administrative leave, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Of course, my other concern is that the letter suppose it came out the 20th, we didn't receive it until, it was 3 weeks later. Frank had told us that on the June 9th, we had a meeting, executive meeting, and that it was good that we don't review it at the time because we're going to have to make a decision on it, which I thought was rather odd, but Frank's our attorney. And then all of a sudden it shows up in the media around the 13th or 14th. And then 2 or 3 days later we get a copy of it. And when I read it at that time, so the whole point being is that this letter came out, y'all decided that it had enough, it was noteworthy, merit enough to pursue it. Council was not made aware of it. I personally believe that we had a called meeting, an executive meeting, where we could have reviewed it. Of course, this is speculation now. Maybe the situation would have been different. God, who knows at this point. Because we've gotten into a lot of time, we spent a lot of money. Of course, always going to have our opinion about these letters. The Police Officers Association, I have the utmost respect for y'all. When you hear the word association, you think of, an association is really like the AMA. Associations benefit all of mankind, civil liberty groups, LULAC. Unions, on the other hand, are for themselves. They take care of their members. And what I mean by that is that you have collective bargaining rights. And also through your association in the state, if you need an attorney, it will be presented to you. So my concern is that with this grievance that came forward, y'all had other options than being protected by the city, and you had other options by your association as far as protection. if you would have followed through with it. So, sure. Victor?
Real quick, I just want to touch bases on that.
Sure.
If you can recall, we had several other officers that used to work for this city that were tenured officers that were here way before Mr. Dominguez was, okay? Some dating as far back as Mr. Kenny Min, okay? That did not want to conform or better yet follow the direction and misdirection that Mr. Dominguez was doing. And they attempted to file grievances on their behalf. Are they here today? No, they're not.
I have no idea what transpired. But I'm just saying, I don't know if you have a steward or not. You don't have a steward, it's up, everything's left up to the president. But basically, your association is a union. If you don't know how to properly do things, well then that's another issue. Totally. The other concern I have is that I've spoken with a couple of officers, it was like a year and a half ago. They did say that, I won't put your names out there, but that officers were getting tattoos down there.
Let's stay on task with the appeal. It really doesn't have anything to do with the appeal. Or can you tie it in?
Well, I can sum it up real quick if you like.
As long as it stays on the appeal. We're chasing rabbits today.
Okay. My main concern is keep referencing tattoos and gang life. Of course, I have no idea. Maybe you officers are trained. But the point being that the fact that there can be so many Hispanic young men in this city that are proud of their heritage.
Mr. White, this has nothing to do with the appeal. This is
Well, this is part of the complaint letter. And I will tell the council to pursue that the gang-like tattoos, which are Aztec in nature, they're saying are Mexican mafia. But how many young men in the city that would be proud of their heritage would have an Aztec tattoo? Does that make them Mexican mafia? The fact that an individual would have a big old Harley Davidson and choose to wear leather, would that make him?
Mr. White, we're going to have to move on. So back like another couple of minutes. Let's stay on task, please.
Yes, ma'am. Anyway, no tattoo policy exists. Although the union does have a policy, I believe, or am I wrong, Victor, that they choose not to enforce. Some jewelry or hairstyle says you must be neat and professional in your appearance.
Actually, yeah, we do. And we do hold our officers to look professional.
Okay.
But we also look to our chief to make these decisions, policies, tattoos. I don't have any tattoos that you can see.
Right.
Do I have tattoos? Yes, sir, I do. But I do believe in professionalism, especially as law enforcement officers.
Right.
Any more questions, Mr. White?
Yes. It was maybe Amy, if you don't remember, it's fine, but maybe give them a little time to come back. We sat down this about a year ago, and I had noticed that the officers had increasing tattoos. And you stated that we don't have a policy. At the time, we were so busy with NRP and other things that you were trying to get them, that you said, God, it's just nothing, I need to get that done. And then it was 2 or 3 weeks later, the chief was out in the parking lot, and I mentioned it to him. And he said, I spoke with Amy about tattoo policy. Fine with me. And we all are working together. So anyway, what has happened, all you officers, I somewhat hold you responsible as to not following through, policing your own, where this was an issue. It seems like the man died, everything hit the media, and as far as Facebook and stuff, I don't believe the city has a right to get it, follow you around on your personal life to see what you're doing or what is going on.
Right, let's stay, please, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes. Yes, we may. Yes. All right.
I'm the fire chief, Philip Prince. We've got 2 more days left in the city. Whatever happens in a department is the responsibility of the leader of that department. You don't point fingers at the employees. You don't tell the employees that it's you, the police. It is the director of that department. I'm sorry. Good things, you point at the men. The bad things, that's my problem. You take care of problems. You have issues. This lady here, it's not up to her to write policies. She passes that on to people. Why wasn't there a policy written in Catridge? Why wasn't it? Why didn't the police chief write that if he felt like there was an issue there? That's a responsibility he has. We had a gentleman here talk about leadership. You lead by example. You don't force anything. You don't force respect. Nobody forces respect. You know, when I leave out, if I had 4 of my guys come to me and say, I have no confidence in you, chief, you know what I would do? Give me 30 days, I'll resign. Because no confidence means they don't respect you. You don't force people to do things. There's a way to manage. There is a way to supervise. I'm sorry. That's the way it is. You earn respect. You don't do that. These guys right here put their life on the line every day for every citizen, every visitor there is. My guys, right over there, they do the same thing. These guys work hand in hand. We trust each other. We have to. I'm sorry. There's a decision to be made. Somebody needs a decision. But you just remember what these people said. It's going to reverberate in the city for years. Not tomorrow. Not next month. Not 2 years. When I resigned, I made a statement. There's personal opinion. I'm sorry, I can't support personal opinion. I'm here to support these citizens. Take care of these citizens. That's what I have to say.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, it is my job. And I can tell you that I know what goes on in my police department, what goes on in my department. It's rarely there's a surprise. Normally, I know before it gets reported to me or to Amy. And usually I'm the one who goes to Amy and says, this is what's going on, I'm on top of it, I'm keeping on top. I know so much of what goes on in my department while I'm on duty, and even when I'm not off. Even to a point that to this day, right now, I can tell you that the one person who's filed this complaint on me, who it becomes a matter of credibility, whether are you going to believe me to say that we never had the conversation, or you believe Officer Ortiz, who is a traffic officer and enforces traffic law in the state of Texas, is currently, at this moment, his vehicle is parked outside with expired registration and a sticker. And you can ask Mr. Ortiz if that's true or not and see how he answers. This is the man you wish you want to listen to and believe. His credibility, he's breaking the law every time he operates his vehicle here, and I know that. I know what goes on in my department, and I know what happens. I never knew about Mr. Messina being affiliated with any gangs or a gang member. Had I known, these 2 people would have been the first people I would have told. I can assure you, and I was willing to take a polygraph on that when it first came up. I was willing to be the first one to take a polygraph. That's how positive I was of my ability to lead my department. And like Chief Prince says, while it is my responsibility, I can't impose a citywide policy. If a tattoo policy is imposed, it has to be on all employees. If I put it on them, the association will come after me. And they will, because they'll say discrimination. And if you're doing it to them, why are you doing it to the police department and the fire department? Why aren't you doing it to public works? So when we had these discussions with Ms. Booker, we discussed a tattoo policy, a social media policy. About 1.5 years ago, I remember coming to Ms. Booker, me and Mr. Griffin, because we got a conference, and that's one of the things they emphasize on is the social media policy, how important it is. And Ms. Booker will verify that. And we did have that conversation, and again, like she says, man, we got a ton of things going on. We just don't have the time. But I, as a police chief, cannot impose a citywide policy. That's her job, and y'all too, and your job to approve it. So it's unfair to say that I have the ability to do these things, when in fact, I've done as much as I can. And I can tell you that in a matter of, when it comes to credibility, my credibility should stand in itself. Mr. Gideon, you made the point that my actions have spoken louder than my words, and you know I'm a team player. You have always said, Chief, thank you for giving money out of your federal forfeiture fund. Thank you for providing us the information we need to make a sound decision when we did the dispatch project. Thank you for going out for almost $400,000 in grants. That I went out and personally, along with us, I'm not Superman, I had help, but I lived that. I lived that to help the citizens, to help the city. In order for you to be able to use your money to build your streets, to provide better services for the community, in order for them not to have to pay higher taxes. So I have contributed to this department. I have done everything I possibly can do above and beyond what is required of me. And I have inspired my men to work. They've been the most productive that they've ever been. And court records will show that, if you wish to pull the records. It'll show these guys work for me, and they'll continue working for me when I come back. Because that's what they're trained to do. They're professionals. As professional police officers, they will follow their leaders. That's what they're going to do. So, thank you.
Mr. Sanchez, do you have any final statements?
To be ensured they'll be treated fairly. I think it's a fair concern. What I'd ask you to do is look at the record. During Mr. Dominguez's tenure, he was the subject of a number of grievances and complaints that were brought before him and to the city administrator. Many of his employees are still here. Henry understands that when you serve in a leadership position, you're going to get complaints. You're going to get grievances. Like today, it's part of the job. And I want to reassure you that what he said is a very accurate description. Mr. Ortiz or any other officer that shows up and does their job has nothing to worry about. If he has an issue to file a grievance, and it will be handled professionally and in a business-like manner like every other grievance, this is part of the process. So rest assured, the chief has a demonstrated record of leadership in dealing with employee complaints. You're going to get complaints. Not everyone's going to be happy.
And I respect what you're saying, and I totally agree. If one person comes in with a grievance, that's it. But turn around, you've got a whole line of men right there. Not one, not two, not three, not four. You've got a whole line down that row right there. They're saying that they have no confidence in you.
There's a difference between that and a grievance. If I give an opinion about whether or not I have good confidence in any elected official or department leader, that's one thing. Your specific question is, would they be treated fairly with respect to grievance? There's not a single penny grievance against you, other than the one issued by the Ortiz. I think, again, we need to keep an eye on the ball. This former police chief has dealt with grievances, has dealt with them fairly, and it's never resulted in anything other than a resolution. And I don't think there's any reason to expect anything.
Sitting here listening to each one of my colleagues, our city manager, Henry, nothing spoke louder to me tonight. It's something that was really unexpected to hear. And that was to hear our fire chief. And that spoke volumes to me. And to hear him say that even 4 members of his department have no confidence in him, that he would gladly walk out the door. That spoke volumes to me. And he wasn't just saying that to say that. I know Chief Prince, and he would do that. And out of all the accusations and letter reading and everything, that spoke a lot of volumes. And I respect what he said. If the police association would humor me one at a time, if you would like to, just humor me. Sure.
Should we go now?
Sure.
Later?
One at a time.
I understand what you're trying to do, but I need to object to that because it's not part of the reason for the termination. And we're putting the apple before the cart before the horse. And the reason we're here is because the city administrator made a decision based on a discrete set of allegations involving, if I can finish, involving Officer Pacina and a prior record alleged poor leadership. Let's focus on that. Now if that's the case, then we need to take a poll of the entire audience.
No, because I'm taking a poll of.
But that's what it is, it's a poll. And let's just stick to the record. So let me lodge my objection. And let's focus on the reasons forming the basis of the case.
Okay, if you object to it, done deal. I will not ask these men to do that. It was just to humor me. And help me decide on something that, if they truly have no confidence in this gentleman, who I adore, I think would grow with him. But if you don't want to humor me, then it's off the table. You don't have to do it.
If I could add also that not all members are here, that's why we're being unfair. Because it's not the whole police department here, we are missing members of the police department. And some of those members, I think, would vote in on my behalf, so.
Yeah, every member of the association here is with the exception of one. Every member of the association here is with the exception of one. Is with the exception of one. And is that the one that cannot vote?
No, that is the one that cannot show up.
Okay.
First one doing it? Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, that we are closed for citizen comments. I'd just like to say a few things before we go to a vote. Regarding the grievances, you know, we've had a very good relationship personally. And just like Mr. Williams said, this is never personal, this is just about what's best for the city. And my role as mayor, I need to make the decision back to you. What I think is best for the city. I've been told by a lot of officers that they're afraid that if you come back, that you're going to retaliate against them because that was the style that he exhibited. Don't know if that's true, that's just what I was told. There's something too that Mr. Burton brought up, is that if someone, a large group of people, small group of people, have a problem with you coming back, I really wonder what your motive would be to want to come back. You know, we offered you a wonderful opportunity to see what you needed to do, but I'm not asking for a question right now. That's your response. But, you know, it's just, I think it's very important that what Chief Hood said should be listened to, that usually when a group gives no confidence, that's something that we should take notice of. I know personally that Amy tried very hard to improve her leadership skills because we had a discussion about that. And she could have terminated you a couple of times over instances. Chose not to because she wanted to improve your leadership skills. She gave you opportunities to take training that no other employee had that opportunity. So that was because she saw something really special and she wanted to improve. I just get the feeling what we've heard is that there wasn't that much improvement. One thing that really concerns me, and I'd like to address it, Mr. Garza, if I'm out of line, you stop me. On the very first night of the occurrence, when you came back to debrief, and I asked you, Chief, did you know anything about this? And your response was no. I personally asked you 4 more times in different meetings, and your response was no. I didn't know anything. And then we hear that in the internal investigation that you did admit. Yes, they told me, this is what I was told you said, that yes, you did know that there was something. My question is, if you even suspected, if one person came to you and made an outcry that I believe there might be something to this, my question to you, and I'd like an answer to this, is why did you not go to your boss and say, this may be bogus, maybe it's nothing at all, but what if it is? What should we do?
Yes, ma'am. And that's exactly what I would have done as I've done in the past. Anytime the issues came up, whether they were minor or major, I would immediately contact Amy.
So you're saying that you did not express during the internal investigation that you knew?
No, ma'am. I think that was taken out of context. When we were talking about were the tattoos and the tattoo policy, I think Ms. Reed, when she asked the question, and when they kept saying gang, 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 is where the confusion came in. And I made it a point to her to say at the very end, I said, look, for clarification, and Ms. Reed, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm saying it was the tattoo policy, not gang tattoos.
Yes, please.
During the investigation, we met with several officers. Several officers told us that they had made those reports to Chief Dominguez. Some of those were counted in the investigation report. When we had the discussion with the chief, he indicated that some of his, this is something he volunteered. He said that the pretty boy officers had reported about gang-like tattoos of Officer Pacino. It was towards the end of our discussion. Those are his words. They were mine.
Thank you. Also, I'd just like to quickly address the sick leave. I agree. We just wanted you to take some time because you said that you weren't sleeping. You were traumatized. You had gone through a lot. And I remember I asked, do you want to take vacation leave? Do you want to take sick leave? And you agreed that you would take sick to not use up your vacation time. Do you remember that?
Not necessarily, Mayor, no. Remember we had a discussion about my feelings and what we had gone through. Yes, we had gone through a very traumatic experience.
Yes.
But I felt confident that I felt obligated that I needed to be here for the guys in order to continue giving them the counsel that I brought them in from San Antonio Police Department and to be here for them as a source of motivation and inspiration.
But you did agree that you needed some time off.
I agreed that I needed to take a break. However, I did agree for a whole week.
This is much more than Balcones Heights. This is much more than our 1 square mile and 3,000 citizens. This extends to Bexar County and the city of San Antonio, city leaders, government officials, and developers, and everybody. It's not just, there's not an island here. This is a very big decision that this council has to make, and I pray that we make the wise decision.
Make a motion to not approve the appeal of Mr. Dominguez.
Motion's on the table to not,
Clarification, is that to not approve the appeal, so your motion is to uphold the termination?
Uphold the termination.
Second.
motion is to uphold the termination of Henry Dominguez. All in favor to uphold the termination, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Termination is upheld. There being no further business, it is 7:50 and we are adjourned.
Their equipment. Right now, their equipment was speaking, so I've got this.
It sounded like they had offered you a severance package. Do you regret not taking it?
No, sir, I'm fighting for my rights. And as a police officer, I've always told you, fight for your rights. I mean, you have rights. We are American citizens, and we have a Constitution. And I believe in that, and that's exactly why I couldn't take it. Because it is within my moral character not to accept or that I don't believe it, because I believe in it.
Why do you feel that these officers would say these things if they weren't true?
There's obviously, when I came in, there was a lot of turmoil. When I took over this position, they were, Balcones Heights was being, they were in the public's eye for discrimination. So I feel that my changes were like I said, I believe in the right to the party. I believe in putting men oriented people. That's where I was raised. I was sitting in the office under my administration, records will show our public was very productive. We have gone out and been very fine. We were very proactively visible. I didn't even hide visibility insurance. So for them to get that mysterious giving up that way to work.
Were you a bully, and did you use retaliation and intimidation?
No, if anything, I cultivated my officers. Mr. Mata is a canine officer strictly because of he was a 1 year rookie when I came here. He told me his dream was to be a canine officer. I allowed him to go with the dog. I supported the dog by opportunity in the city by buying him vet food, sending him vet food, giving him the ability to go to training, to gang conferences. So he's one of the officers that I have basically helped up, along with other officers that have come in and said, hey, this is my dream, and I've tried to make their dreams come true by giving them training, by offering them to go to school and in different conferences, and to joining different organizations like the Olympic Gang Association. So I've always been one about motivating and promoting my officers. And again, the record will show that. That's what I've always done to my officers. I've always been motivated. So the bullying tactics, if anything, I guess they're interpreting my bullying tactics to be my style of management. My style of management is I expect you to repeat. I mean, I do take offense if an officer is sitting at the police department with his feet up on the desk. I'm sorry. I don't believe that's what the taxpayer should pay for. I believe if there's crime being committed, you need to be out there and return it. And so that's what some of my tactics were, is to put them to work.
What did you think about what the fire chief and the lieutenant said about you tonight?
Yeah, that was surprising. The fire chief and I have always had a decent relationship. Like I say, I respect the fire chief's opinion, but he's not in my position. In my position, I'm fighting for my rights. The fire chief doesn't know where I'm at. So he's talking at from his point of view. His point of view could very easily be misinterpreted from his point of view that it was as simply as, well, they just don't like it. You know, and that's why he would have left it. That's fine. That's his style of management. That's what he believes in. I'm going to fight for my rights. And that's exactly what I did from the very beginning. That's why I hired an attorney, because I could see that this was not going in a good direction. I could see it was politically motivated. I could see that in their opinion, in this incident, someone had to burn for this incident. I just couldn't see why it had to be me. If anybody should have accepted the responsibility of city administrator, because she is.
What's next for you?
Well, obviously, I still have it. I'm still capable of doing law enforcement. I haven't lost my license. It's just an administrative function. I will go on. I will go on and I'll work somewhere else. And I've never been one to be afraid to get my hands dirty. I can do traffic stops. I can do investigations. As my resume shows, that I'm very experienced and expert doing things. Yeah, I'm not dead. I would go on and on.
Is this fight over here? Is there any legal action you'll take against the city, or is this over?
Obviously, I'm fighting for my rights, and I believe that in the end, the fastest. So in this case, mostly I believe driven by emotion. The emotions play a lot into the decision, and that's the way things are. That's the world that I live in. The world that I live in is facts. You don't arrest somebody on assumptions. And like I said, they have one person, I'm sorry, they have one person whose statement is what started this whole thing, that he himself is driving that brown truck in the corner with his fire registration and inspection. I'm a man who breaks the law, blatantly breaks the law on a daily basis. And yet he goes out and writes people citations for this. I'm very offended by that. If I was here, that would be happening. He would have been able to. But our city administrator, I just made her aware of it, so let's see if he drives off, or if there's any kind of disciplinary action against him. Because as a police officer, we should have the highest standard. I've always held myself high, and I hold my officers to the highest standard. And I would not accept that kind of activity.
The last question I have for you is there anything that has come out after Officer Christina's death that leads you to believe that there was anything to suggest that he had any sort of gang activity, had any sort of gang tattoos, and was anything that we could have done to stop all that?
No, again, I've been out of the loop, per se, so I don't know where the investigation is at. I can tell you on last official day, at that point it was still ongoing, and there was no conclusive evidence one way or the other, whether he was in fact in any kind of illegal activity, in gangs. We don't know, even at this point, no one has told me officially. I haven't seen any news reports, nor have I seen any police reports to say that. So even at this moment, it's still not verified that he did in fact. And in fact, was the reason he got killed. I mean, we're all assuming it's simply based on the facts, circumstances of the death, that I would be more confident if I had a report from him that said, this is why it happened, based on the legitimate investigation, not on the specific assumptions.
Chief McMahon has never brought that up in the group.
As far as
any concerns about gang affiliation?
His report to me was basically the circumstances of obviously side and also after the fact, it's the actual investigation place. So it was just basically a group of
Chief, thank you so much.